There is only one, and I know this. This one is everything. It's pretty simple. One life. One love, one joy, one beauty, one peace, one power. All of it, one. Because there's only one thing. We kind of call it God, we call it spirit, we call it universe or source. We call it a lot of things, but it's still only one. And we can't be apart from it. I know this. I cannot be separate from this one because I'm part of it. Each of us is part of it. This table is part of it. The carpet, the floor, the building, the sky is all part of that. Whole and complete, nothing missing ever. Sometimes what appears to be missing is just behind a tree, down the road, beyond our sight. But I know that that is true all the time, that what I call forth in my life, if I don't see it right here, it's coming. And I believe we know that when we plant fabulous, what comes? Fabulous comes. When we plant sunflowers, we get sunflowers. It's weird. So what do we plant? I plant fabulous. I plant prosperity. I plant love. I plant joy. And that's what comes to my life because that's what I'm planting. And I'm so grateful to understand that it's a cause and effect thing that just happens. That's what we kind of call the law. And the law says, yes, ma'am, how high do you want to jump? To each of us, all the time. We plant sour grapes, we get sour grapes. We plant disappointment, it's always going to be, that's what I'm going to get. So I plant joy. I plant prosperity. And I love the way prosperity is showing up right in this weekend, for instance, the way that we have prosperity. We have so much in our community. Prosperity is overflowing into this fellowship hall out there. We have so much that we are sharing it with the world, and prosperity magnetizes more prosperity. Abundance magnetizes more abundance. We may know this about junk drawers growing and growing and growing, but that's because that's what we've been planting. You plant simplicity, you get simplicity. You plant love, you get love. And I know that's the way it works. And I am grateful to know that's the way it works so I can work it. And I do. And I know today's talk, planting wisdom into our hearts, planting love into our hearts, planting new consciousness about what is possible versus what is impossible. Let's plant open-hearted willingness to learn and grow, be bigger, more, stronger, faster. I am grateful for this, and I let these words reside in the room, flying into that miracle place called the law, and landing firmly in our lives. And so it is.
So, this whole month we've been looking at the idea of transcendent purpose. Transcendent purpose, a purpose that is beyond just my little, purpose of, I want to get to the next meal. I want to get my chocolate supply enhanced, whatever that is. Transcendent purpose. And so we've been playing with different ideas about that, and today we're going to look at the idea of mission possible. So, our ultimate transcendent purpose is, you ready? To express the divine nature on this planet. Are you good with that? No problem. Okay. And it's true, by the way, of every rock, plant, and animal on this planet, because it's all just the infinite being the infinite in form, yes? Okay. But we're the only ones with consciousness, which includes the ability to say no to our purpose as well as yes. One of my favorite stories of someone who said no is the story in the Bible of Jonah. And Jonah received the word of the Lord, which is the call to a divine purpose, right? We've all at some point in time heard the call of we may have different words for it, by the way, our high vision or whatever like that, but that call. And he's called to go to preach to the evil empire, the Assyrians, up in Nineveh, which is not the food truck downtown, but the actual place over in Persia. And the story occurs in two parts. In the first part, Jonah, instead of going to Nineveh, says, "Oh, hell no." And so he goes, and I'm told that in the Hebrew, if you read it, it's kind of very, they said it's really kind of written like a child's rhyme. And so he's called to go up to Nineveh, and instead he goes down to the docks, and he goes down into the ship, and he heads to a ship that's sailing down to a different place, the opposite direction. How many of us have had that call and said, "Let me go the opposite direction"? I have my hand up, so, yeah. So it's headed in the opposite direction. And of course, as we know, according to the story, God sends us a ferocious storm. It's ferocious enough that the ship is in danger of breaking up. The sailors are doing everything they can to save the ship. They're dumping their cargo. They're praying to their own gods. And meanwhile, Jonah, it says, is asleep in the inner hold of the ship. All this chaos is going on around, and he's asleep in the inner hold. All of this is symbolic. All of this is symbolic. Many of us are called and say no. And even while our life is falling apart around us, endangering our friends, family, and loved ones, we hide from our purpose. We hide from that calling, sleeping as deep as we can in our safe comfort zone. Not you guys, but you know people like that, right? Breathe. Until finally we're cast out of the safe, resistant life we had. Something comes along and blows it up so badly that we have to do something. Eventually the sailors on this ship, say we got to figure out who's causing this to happen, because they know this storm is not just natural, right? And so who's causing this to happen? And eventually they throw lots, and the lot falls on Jonah, and finally he says, and they look at him and they go, "What did you do?" And they said, "Well, I've got this God, and he told me to go this way, but I went that way." And they're like, "You're out of here, buddy." Actually, he voluntarily jumps off the ship. They try a few more things to save him. And then we end up in the belly of a great fish. Yes? By the way, it's not a whale. It just says in the Bible, if you actually read it, it says a great fish. And by the way, it says God prepared a great fish. And that kind of gives you a clue to what's going on here. So first of all, the belly of a great fish is an idiom. We use something similar called, I'm in a pickle. How many of you have actually been inside of a pickle? Not had a pickle inside of you, but been inside of a pickle? Right, nobody. How many of you have actually been between a rock and a hard place? Right? And maybe a couple people who were doing your rock scrambling or something up in the mountains, right? Right? But it's a symbolic, it's a metaphor. And it's for the metaphor for the journey from rejection to acceptance, the journey from that causes the shift in consciousness that is necessary to answer the call. Because while he's in resistance, he can't answer the call. So while he's in the belly of the whale, he finally says, "Okay, fine," and starts praying to God, and gives one of my favorite little lines here. It says, "I went down to the bottoms of the mountains. The earth shut up its bars against me forever." How many of you have felt that way at some time? You're at the bottom of the bottom of the bottom, and the earth has shut up its bars against you forever. Yet you have brought up my life from corruption, O God. We can't do it ourselves sometimes, right? Sometimes we have to. This is the, I think, second step of the 12 steps is I turn my life over to a power greater than myself. Many of us have experienced this kind of bottoming out feeling on our life's journey when my way doesn't work anymore. Don't you hate that? When my way doesn't work out anymore, some of you might not hate it when my way doesn't work out anymore because you want your way, but when your own my way doesn't work out anymore. And there's nothing left to do but surrender to the way of the higher self, our transcendent purpose, which Jonah, by the way, does in the second half of the story. And there's more to that. There's one of these days I'm going to do the whole story of Jonah just as a talk, because it's a really funny, fun, and enlightening story. Our transcendent purpose is to express the nature of the divine. Paul, in his letter to the Galatians, says, the fruits of the Spirit are, and we just did this in the meditation for those of you who are here, the fruits of the Spirit are love, joy, peace, patience, gentleness, goodness, faith. It's to express that nature. That's what we're here to do. Breathe. Each in our own unique way. It's the uncovering and discovering of that way that is the first part of our journey. It's hey, oh yeah, I have a transcendent purpose. I have a higher purpose than just my day-to-day existence. That's the first part of the journey. The second part of the journey is that we must also learn that we are called to make manifest this purpose, to realize it. That is, to make it real. I spoke last week about Maria Nemeth, and who says that as metaphysicians we often metaphysical because we don't bring our ideas into form. We don't bring our ideas into form. The divine seeks to express in form. If you're not sure about that, just look around at all the form. Yes? It's not the idea of a chair that you're sitting on. You're actually sitting on a chair. It's not the idea of chocolate that we want. It's the reality and the experience of chocolate. And have you noticed there's a few planets and stars out there? So the divine manifests in form. It doesn't remain in unrealized potential. Okay? And we, nudge your neighbor, we are agents or conduits for that expression here. Nudge your neighbor and say, you are a conduit for the expression of the divine. Doesn't that sound wonderful? There's this little rub. Manifesting our transcendent purpose can be uncomfortable. Can call us to go places and do things outside of our comfort zone. So last week I talked about our knowledge zone, that if we use the what we know and draw a circle around it and use that as a symbol for this is what we know, if we don't know a whole lot, the circumference of the circle is very small. And so past the circumference is all that we don't know. And so if we don't know a whole lot, then it appears that there's not a whole lot we don't know because we got a really small circumference, yes?
That's so funny. Profoundly funny. Thank you.
As we learn more, our circle expands, our circumference expands, and we become aware of more and more of what we don't know. So that the wiser people realize how little they actually know and how much more there is to be known, yes? Well, guess what? Our comfort zone is the same way. If we have a really small comfort zone, it appears that there's not much outside of that, and anything it is, well, I'm going to dismiss that because we just don't need that. Yes? So we know how to work within our little circle of our comfort zone. We feel in control. And we know how to work with it even if it's not very healthy or fulfilling. Breathe. As we explore outside of our comfort zone, just like as we explore outside of our knowledge zone, we learn new things. We expand to include new ways of being, and our comfort zone and our capacity to adapt to new situations and with an expanded variety of ways to be gives us greater ability to engage with more of life. Not only that, it also builds trust in our ability to adapt and to learn. And it lets us, not outside circumstances, be the creative factors in our lives. See, our comfort zone gets disturbed by outside circumstances. For those of us who are trying to maintain this little comfort zone, yes? And so, for me, one of the things that used to really bother me is walking into a room full of people that I didn't know. And it was very uncomfortable. And all of my, nobody wants you, you're the stupid little nerd that sat by yourself in school all the time. All that stuff shows up for me the minute I walk into a room. Now, I remember it was Linda Bremer who actually said that she learned the lesson of when you walk into a room full of people, they will either immediately like you, immediately dislike you, or not even notice that you're there. And it has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with you. So we bring our belief systems into the external circumstances. And if those circumstances trigger feelings of discomfort, then they're within us. And we can either sit there and go, okay, I'm going to change, I need to either leave or change that because I feel uncomfortable, or we can use that as a portal, a gateway to say, ooh, what is that about? What must I be believing about myself or believing about other people that I'm feeling that? Our feelings are the voice of our beliefs. Can we listen? So we get to ask the question, am I in charge of my own feelings, my own experience in life? And this is important because for a greater purpose, a greater individualized expression of infinite life, it will take us out beyond our current level of comfort. Yes? Our expression of a greater purpose is a hero's journey. Our expression of a greater purpose is a hero's journey. In the Lord of the Rings, the movie, there's two hobbits, Merry and Pippin, who find themselves swept up in a transcendent purpose with their buddies Frodo and Sam, right? Who are also being swept up in a larger purpose with a ranger named Aragorn, who's also swept up in a larger purpose. Sometimes that's how our transcendent purpose shows up. We're just kind of going along. We're stealing food from the local farmer, which is what Merry and Pippin were doing in the movie. When all of a sudden their friends come through and they say, hey, we'll go with you. We'll take a little adventure, sure. And pretty soon they're off in what they think is a merry little thing, and all of a sudden they're being force-marched by this Aragorn who understands the danger that's pursuing them, which is massively life-threatening. And Merry is tremendously displayed to learn that Aragorn does not know about second breakfasts. Not only that, he doesn't know about elevensies, he doesn't know about luncheon, afternoon teas, dinner, or supper. And hobbits, live for the pleasures of the table. And so he is outside of his comfort zone because, oh my God, I'm not going to be able to eat the way I normally eat. Take a breath. Not only that, Aragorn doesn't care about second breakfasts, elevensies, etc., because he understands the purpose of what he needs to do. His comfort zone is much larger than Merry's. By the way, his gets challenged later on in the story. Another Tolkien example is from the book and the movie The Hobbit, which is a generation before Merry and Pippin, where another Hobbit, Bilbo Baggins, is living in a nice, very comfortable home in his little hobbit hole in the Shire, yes? And he receives a visit from a wizard named Gandalf with an invitation to an adventure. Now, understand that for hobbits, adventures are to be avoided. Not you, but you know people like that, right? They're to be avoided by good, well-mannered hobbits. But wizards, whether they be people or circumstances, bring a couple of qualities with them. And one is the invitation to be more, the invitation to grow, the invitation to expand. And the other thing they bring is insight. Because there's something that Gandalf knows about Bilbo that Bilbo kind of forgot himself, and that is that he's only half a Baggins. The other half of him belongs to a family called the Tooks, which are known for their adventures. They're a disreputable family among the hobbits because they always go out on adventures. And he knows that lives within Bilbo. The truth is that all of us have a Baggins side and a Took side, yes? We have the side that wants to stay home, be comfortable, and that's really good. But we have the side that yearns for, longs for an adventure, something greater than ourselves. I know that because you're all sitting here instead of the church you grew up in. Yes? Unless, of course, you grew up in religious science. But at some point in time, you decide to adventure into something new. If you're like me, the first day that I showed up for Religious Science Church, I sort of walked in like this. You know, I'd grown up Catholic. I was never, ever, ever going to go to a church again. But the took side of me knew that it had to go to something new. And some doggone friend recommended this silly Religious Science Church in Bellevue, Washington to me. Well, actually, she didn't recommend the one in Bellevue. She just said, find one. I did the research. And now I are a minister. So we each have that baggins, we each have that took. So the baggins side says no, but wizards don't take no well. Our high calling doesn't take no very well. And so that night in the story, one or two at a time, 13 dwarves show up in Bilbo's home, completely disrupting his nice, safe, comfortable life, upsetting him terribly, but eventually he says yes to the adventure. He says yes to the adventure and goes with them. And there's an interesting question and answer that happens between Bilbo and Gandalf. Bilbo asks Gandalf from that Baggins consciousness, can you guarantee my safe return? Don't we all, when we want to go on an adventure, guarantee, well, okay, I'll go a little bit, but I want to get back to normal, whatever normal is, which is the way it was. I have news for you. Normal is gone. And I'm not talking about because following COVID. I'm talking about every single day, every single moment, whatever was before is gone. It's over. Breathe. So he asks that, will you promise that I will come back? And Gandalf replies, no. And if you do, you will not be the same. See, the expression of a transcendent purpose will change us. It will call us higher and deeper than we've gone before because the nature of spirit is expansive. To our Baggins side, this sounds terrifying. To our Took side, this sounds wonderful. Yes? We have a few Tooks in here that say, yeah, adventure, let's go. And we have some Bagginses that say, you know, no, I'd rather just sit around and chat with my friends and you know, don't bug me. Breathe. And we get to choose which side to follow. By the way, the universe doesn't care. There's no right or wrong. It's not going to judge you, you're a good person, bad person. It doesn't care. It's just that there is a blessing, if you will, that is available by saying yes to a higher purpose. That doesn't happen if we say no. There's something new, greater that happens. We need to know two things that support us on our journey. The first thing that supports us on our journey is hope. And hope is not, if any of you who are longtime religious scientists know that Ernest was not fond of the word hope. And what he was not fond of was the idea of hope that's this sort of wishful thinking, well, I hope that will happen. He's very much a definite, I know this will happen. But that's not the hope that I'm talking about. The hope is the overall perception that goals can be met, which is the deeper knowing. It's, I absolutely know that this can be met. The second is to realize that the infinite wants and desires its expression through us. We're not going against this infinite presence. We're going with that flow of the infinite presence when we say yes. And that the pathways are already present even if we don't see them. And we won't see them until we step onto the path. Those of you who saw Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade, you know, there's that point where he gets to in the movie where it says step forward, and visually it looks like there's a complete chasm drop-off. And it's not until he actually takes the step forward that he discovers there's a very carefully camouflaged bridge right there to take him where he wants to go. And that's oftentimes what it's like, is we don't know until we commit that there are pathways available that we are supported on that process. So the adaptability and creativity demanded by the journey, the call, calls us outside of our comfortable ways of being in the world. And it's the willingness to focus on the what. What is my purpose? And let the how show up. Letting the how show up. Finding a way no matter what. Letting the how and the tools and the practices we'll need to allow our transcendent purpose to manifest through us. Audre Lorde, was an African American lesbian activist, said, "When I dare to be powerful, to use my strength in the service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I am afraid. When I dare to be powerful, when I dare to use my strength in service of my vision, then it becomes less and less important whether I'm afraid, and I will add, and whether I'm uncomfortable. Because something bigger is and more important is happening than my discomfort. And finally, one of our ingrained comfort zones behaviors to release is our fear of tension and our addiction to being nice. Martin Luther King, in his letter from Birmingham City Jail, so he's writing this while he's in jail, says, "I am not afraid of the word tension. I have earnestly worked and preached against violent tension, but there is a type of constructive, non-violent tension that is necessary for growth." And an activist minister named L. Dowd says, "Many people, white people in particular, have little tolerance for tension. We have been taught to avoid tension. Our condition has trained us to recoil from discomfort, to think of it as an inherently bad thing, something to sidestep and evade at all costs. Instead of leaning into tension to see what we can learn from it, we often avoid it. But when we do this, when we turn away from tension, we fail to see the gift that this tension can be in revealing the truth. We miss out on the clarity it brings with it, the opportunity to move forward." So tension shines a light on what's really happening. Tension is our discomfort. Shines a light on what's really happening, not what our nice, polite society wants us to happen and pretend and wishfully thinking is happening. So if we're to really create a world that works for all, we must take this journey. Remember that this journey isn't a journey of all pain and suffering. I recently had somebody who was kind of a little upset with something that I was doing, who said, "Don't you want a happy congregation?" And I said, "No, I want a spiritually growing conversation. Sometimes spiritual growth involves discomfort. But there's a joy that comes from knowing that we are on our true path. There's a joy, a deep joy that comes from working for our vision, for our highest and greatest good. And there's a joy and a knowing that there's both sunshine and rain on the journey. And besides, it's a whole lot better than being stuck in the belly of a whale. And by the way, dwarves know how to have fun. So there's a transcendent purpose I want to take. I know we're running a little bit late, but I want to take a moment to read through this. This is our global vision for Centers for Spiritual Living. So I want to invite you to take this in for a moment. We envision all people, all beings, and all life as expressions of God. We see a world in which each and every person lives in alignment with their highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. A world in which individually and collectively we are called to a higher state of consciousness and action. We envision humanity awakening to its spiritual magnificence and discovering the creative power of thought, a world where each and every person discovers their own personal power and ability to create an individual life that works within a world that works for everyone. We envision a world in which we live and grow as one global family that respects and honors the interconnectedness of all life. A world where this kinship with all life prospers and connects through the guidance of spiritual wisdom and experience. We envision a world where personal responsibility joins with social conscience in every area of the political, corporate, academic, and social sectors, providing sustainable structures to further the emerging global consciousness. We envision a world where each and every person has enough food, a home, a sense of belonging, and a world of peace and harmony, enfranchisement and justice. We envision a world in which resources are valued, cared for, and grown, and where there is generous and continuous sharing of these resources. We envision a worldwide culture in which forgiveness, whether for errors, injustices, or debts, is the norm. We envision a world which has renewed its emphasis on beauty, nature, and love through the resurgence of creativity, art, and aesthetics. And we envision a world that works for everyone and for all of creation. That is the transcendent purpose to which the organization that we are part of envisions. So this week I want to invite you to do two spiritual practices. Number one is to continue to listen to your inner wisdom self as it shows you your transcendent purpose and your next steps to express that purpose. So you're going to continue to listen to that. And then the second thing is do something this week that moves you outside of your comfort zone. Pay attention to how you feel as and after you do it. Are you willing to play with those two practices this week? Somewhat. Yes. So I want to close with a quote from Tricia Hersey, from our book of the month, which is Rest is Resistance, a manifesto. And she says, "You were not just born to center your entire existence on work and labor. You were born to heal, to grow, and to be of service to yourself and community, to practice, to experiment, to create, to have space, to dream, and to connect." We have an affirmation to remind us of this. Say this with me. I say yes to the journey of expressing my transcendent purpose. I use this one wild and precious life to express my highest divinity. So I do, and so it is. Thank you.